Okay, good afternoon.
Hi, Claire.
So on our spotlight on today, we're talking to Bríd Heffernan for the Gentlewomen's Union, which is a multi-industry support and mentorship group for women in leadership and women in business. And Bríd has kindly agreed to come and have a chat to us. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Hi. Sure, happily. Thanks for having me on, Claire. So I am currently the Senior Director of Global Sales in a legal technology company. So I have got an interesting background. My background has been legal originally, and I came to Australia a few years ago, and since coming to Australia, have moved into the more corporate business world. So it's been an interesting little journey. I can tell you more about that if you'd like, but interesting career path to get to where I am.
Yes, you've had some of your very own like Elwood's moments having to do some requalification and stuff when you came here, eh?
Yeah, so it's been a funny story, and I love hearing about other people's backgrounds as well. It's 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 interesting how a lot of us end up where we are. So my background as a student, I really wanted to be a lawyer, and I did that. So studied, became an Irish solicitor, so qualified in Ireland, practiced there for a few years, but we had a global recession in Ireland a few years ago, and I decided to go on a holiday to Australia. And as so many Irish people do, decided to get a visa and work here for a few years. In order to get a visa, though, an Irish lawyer in Australia, you need to be an Australian lawyer. So I embarked on the journey of requalifying over here, and in the meantime, needed a visa basically to get up and running. So I got sponsored to get into legal sales. So I've done different sorts of legal sales roles. Initially started in more, firstly, legal recruitment, like so many Irish and English and UK people. Then moved into legal tech, and I've been working across legal, like law firms, legal e-discovery and investigations, and legal operations, so internal legal department sales for the past 10 years. My role has covered direct individual contributor roles, managing a team of salespeople, SDRs, salespeople and SDRs, individual contributor and managing teams, and in different regions. So I've done large industry, medium-sized entities, startups to scale-ups, and across different countries like Australia, New Zealand, worked in the US, and currently I manage a team in the UK who's responsible for APAC and EMEA. So a really wide berth of experience, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool and pretty impressive, to be honest. Um, so one thing we see, right, and like I'm in tech, so legal in tech, different industries, but sometimes a similar kind of culture, and we see a lot of disparity in gender, at particularly that C-suite, senior leadership level, and being client facing. So I'm also client facing, so I meet a lot of other companies of other industries. And why do you think we have such a gender disparity in, say, leadership and like that VC funding ecosystem?
Um, Good question. And you're completely right. I mean, two slightly different things, but the statistics are probably quite similar. I know that only about 2% of like global VC funding actually goes into female only funded businesses. As you're sitting in board meetings and management meetings, you'll see a very similar number of women in those meetings. It's getting better in terms of the progression and people who are being promoted internally, but definitely VC and investment is still not great. I think there's a few different reasons, particularly like with, well, actually with both. I think there's a lot less support sometimes for women. Women seem to pick up a lot of jobs, and you see this in all organizations. Women are often the jack of all trades. If you want somebody to do something, I find that women, and it comes from home, it comes from living, it comes from personalities. I find that women do pick up a lot of um, stuff that needs to get done, that men don't necessarily see. I even think about it in my own home. Like if we're going out somewhere, my dear husband will just walk out the door. whereas I'm closing the curtains, switching on a light, making sure the dog's got water and is in the right room, closing all the other rooms. Like there's things women's brains see, I think, sometimes, and that isn't just in the home, that's obviously in the workplace as well. I know myself, like I'd be irritated if a report wasn't left right or if something wasn't done, or I think about the things that other people will come across before they come across them. I think a lot of women carry that burden as well, in home and in roles, in jobs. I think another huge thing is the relationships that we build and we surround ourselves by. You know, that whole thing of you're the average of the five people you surround yourself by the most. A lot of women don't get into that position where they have other women in that sort of senior level. Um, a lot of women are sort of hesitant to build those relationships and reach out if they're not just organically in front of them. So there's a lot of reasons like that. And I mean, obviously, unconscious bias is a huge thing from which will impact people getting funding, people getting promoted. There's a really interesting diagram that I saw in the AFR recently. It was talking about unconscious bias, and it spoke about how unconscious bias isn't just like against women or against ethnicity, because of course it is. Like the data doesn't lie. Unconscious bias even goes into height. So if you look at the height of the most successful CEOs in Australia, the majority of them get taller and whiter and maler. So that is what you're up against. It's a global thing, and it's unconscious. People are unconsciously saying, let's hire that person, but you gravitate towards that person for roles. And I have seen it myself. I spoke recently about how there was a big opportunity to do something recently, and somebody asked me quite a few times if I had holidays planned for next year. And no. So there's things like you feel people are wondering if you're going to go on a maternity leave, or there's things that I feel like people would like to say, but in this day and age, no, they can't. So yeah, there's a lot of different things hampering people, but there are a lot of solutions and ways you can manage it as well.
100% agree, especially that mental load stuff where like you just remembering all the things. I remember I worked for a company a few years ago, and because it was a tech company and the percentage of females that worked there was very small through a number of factors. Like if they put up an engineering job, they'd get like one female applicant and like 60 males. So, there's a whole bunch of factors there. But they actually had a policy where the women were not to empty the dishwasher, order the birthday cakes, or organize any of the things for that, like to kind of try and even that out, because generally in most offices, and certainly pretty much every office I've ever worked in, it's that it usually is the women that just pick, because like you said, they just see it, they're like, oh, it's Bríd's birthday, are we getting her a cake, are we doing it, and they kind of will just think like in advance with those kind of things. And definitely with the other stuff and the unconscious bias, you see it. There's a lot of studies done about it around, we kind of tend to go for people like ourselves when we're hiring, but if all the people hiring are straight white men over 50, that's kind of limited selection.
And it's not industry specific. I was speaking to a doctor recently, a female doctor, and she was telling me how it was funny. She was organizing all the gift hampers, like for all the assistants and the nurse assistants and the nurses and things. And it just struck me, she's a consultant, and I was like, what are the other consultants doing? She's like, I'm the only female one. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done. But again, outsourcing, being able to delegate some of these things, again, not demanding, you catch a lot more flies with honey than vinegar, but just notice it and work with it.
100%. So kind of leading on from that, what made you want to join the GU?
Again, there's so much, I think, that it's that thing of surrounding yourself by people who are in a similar position and have been through similar experiences. It is nice to see people from other businesses in a senior sort of women's role. I think we can learn a lot from one another. And you don't have to be blindly following somebody's advice, but it's nice to be able to it's nice to get opinions from people who don't work with you sometimes as well. Because no biases, they don't know anything about you. You can be quite honest. Nobody's going to know you were talking about a certain situation and assume it was somebody. It's nice to just have a blank slate and be able to chat to people sometimes. Also, like it's quite inspiring when you can get people's hear about people's backgrounds, see the things that people have triumphed over. So there's a lot of really good things. Hearing the war stories, generally sharing advice, drinks.
That kind of solidarity of
Nice
like,
group to hang out with.
it's
Yeah.
not just me. I'm not the only person in the boardroom. Someone else has had this too. Can be quite nice. On a slightly more personal level, what's something people might not know about you?
I was sort of cringe when I hear that question because I'm actually really boring. But probably my wildlife rescue. I birds and things in my spare time. There's a thing called Wires Wildlife Rescue. It actually works quite well, I think, for corporate workers and people who've got busy schedules, because there's this database you can go onto and you can look up what like animals have been reported like in need of a rescue around you. So every so often I'll go out and I'll save a duck on a balcony, or lorikeets. I do a lot of lorikeets and possums. Love a possum. So saving them, dropping them off to vets, and you can be in and out within an hour and back at the desk. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, and that's when I regret it a little bit. But yeah, my wildlife rescue endeavors is probably the one half interesting thing about me. So
I love that. And for anyone watching and kind of going, this is really inspirational. I'd like to get to where she is, and like this is the exact kind of thing I want to do, and I want to, kind of get to that level of success. What piece of advice would you give them?
I think for me, what's been really important and something I didn't do very well for a long time was knowing my numbers. I say this to everybody. I've said it to you. I say it to everybody. Know your numbers. And it works in corporate quite well. I know it doesn't necessarily translate across some other industries so well, because your worth or your value or whatever isn't just a number in a lot of industries. But if you work in sales or marketing or a corporate business, knowing your numbers, that's what's going to get you ahead. And being able to demonstrate your value. You're not cocky or arrogant or overselling yourself if you're just talking facts. And a lot of the time, I think that's where women sort of struggle. Just when you have your imposter syndrome, or you're doubting if you should speak up. If you know your numbers, if you know what your value is, what you've done, it gives you a lot of grounding and a lot of a good reason to speak up. So know your numbers, always be able to rattle them off and know the actual value that you're bringing to an organization. And then it's just a simple black and white case of this is what I've done and this is why I should be given a spot in that event or that opportunity or that project. So know your numbers.
100%. And look, I've been in a numbers game for 10 years. I could not agree more. The more you know, the easier it is to make your case, right?
Yeah. And I have a colleague who said to me recently, she felt she wasn't being heard in something, and she summed it up really well. She said, I'd rather be shrill and heard than silent and not heard. So as long as you are not making noise for the sake of it, as long as you know what you're talking about, say your piece, be seen. And as long as you can fall back on knowing exactly what you've done, I think you're in a pretty good place.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. And we are just about out of time, but thank you so much for coming to talk to us. This has been fantastic.
No worries. Nice chatting to you, Claire. We're